Welcome back to Mac's Garage. If you like what you see here today, don't forget to hit that subscribe button, like, share, all that good stuff. Today I'm going to be swapping steering wheels in this 1985 Ramcharger. This will be the same for Dodge Ramchargers and pickups and possibly some of the cars that have a tilt Saginaw style steering column. So even though this is a Mopar product, that steering column is actually made by GM. And we're going to go from this steering wheel to this steering wheel, which is a reproduction Mopar Tuff steering wheel. These could have come factory in some of your Dodge trucks through the 70s and possibly into the early 80s. Alright, so the first thing we're going to have to do is get this old steering wheel out of here. We'll start by just simply pulling back on this horn button. It's got basically 4 tabs, 2 in the top, 1 on each side that click into the steering wheel. I will then take the wires off the back, so there's just 2 terminals that should just slide loose. And then another thing that I've done here is I've actually unhooked the battery already. So if you don't have your battery unhooked and you touch these together, the horn should make noise if everything's working right. And I've also got the steering column locked so the steering wheel won't turn. If your steering wheel is already correct in the correct location, this will make this a lot easier. This one's not, I don't remember which way it's off, so it'll be a little bit more difficult. The nut in the center here is a 13/16. We'll simply unthread that. So now that we've got that unthreaded, we've got 2 threaded holes in the wheel itself. I've got this steering wheel puller that's probably older than me. These bolts are a 3/8 16, so we'll go ahead and thread them in. Now you can get a steering wheel puller, you can rent it from a lot of different part stores, or you can buy one. They're not that expensive. Pretty easy deal here. Or you can probably use some other straight pullers to do the same thing. So I've got those threaded in. Several turns. The rule is you want to have as much thread engagement as the thickness of the bolt. So we really only need 3/8 of an inch. Now I'm going to just simply turn the center part in and this wheel should pop. And it's moving, so this one's not going to pop, so it's just going to slowly pull off. Alright. So there we go. The steering wheel is now loose. Before I take it all the way off, I'm going to go ahead and remove these bolts. Now our steering wheel just has a slip ring on the back side, so there's not even really any wires to disconnect. This steering wheel is just now off, and we can set it off to the side. Now to put this steering wheel in, we're having to do some stuff that I'm not real wild about. I'm going to use the adapter from the Grant. I'm going to use the Grant steering wheel adapter to go from this to basically a spacer. So this is a 2-inch spacer. This is 4000. So the part numbers here are 4324 and 4000. So those are Grant part numbers. I really wish there was a way that was just one piece, but we're going to end up with like 4 layers of bolts from the column up to the actual wheel. It kind of is what it is. Now that adapter kit comes with 2 different covers, and I'm going to take this one. So we got 2 different options. I'm just going to set this on here to kind of gauge where it is better, but we've got this arrow that says top. You want to point that up towards the top. So now this one, and you can't see it from the side, but there's a pretty good gap, so that's not the right one. This one, on the other hand, fits pretty good. So before I do this on this particular install, I'm going to take this off, run the wire through there. Remember that this is supposed to point up, so that fastener is supposed to point up. I then have to take my spacer, this is roughly 2 inches, run it down through there. And see, I've got my horn wire protruding through the same spot, so you want to make sure you line all of those up. Line up our bolt holes. Now I'm going to use the bolts that came with the spacer to connect it to the actual lower portion. So these bolts came with the 2-inch spacer. I'm going to use them to hook the spacer and the adapter together. Alright, now to hook these two together, I'm going to use a little bit of the blue medium strength Loctite. I shouldn't need to remove this ever again, so I could probably realistically use red, but I'm not going to. I very rarely use red. That stuff is not a joke. You don't get things apart after you use red Loctite. So I'm just going to go ahead and line these all up, which is going to be a great time. Okay, so while I tighten these, I'm actually going to just pop it on here real quick. Doesn't really matter where it goes. We can put this top bolt up though if you want. Okay, it's on there. The steering wheel is locked. I am actually going to torque these. These are 10 to 12 foot-pounds. Because I've got the Loctite on there, that's going to act as somewhat of a lubricant. So I'll go with 10 foot-pounds to inch-pounds, which is what this torque wrench is 120. So there's 1, 2, 3. I'll go back and hit them one more time just for fun. Okay, so there is our original base setup. So now we've got this all bolted together as one assembly. I'm getting kind of greasy as I'm doing this, but that's all right. Now this bolt still needs to go up, so this bolt is the one that had the up sign next to it. Now, I know the steering wheel of this is off a little bit one side or the other, and I can't quite remember which one. So the next few steps we're going to do a little less permanent at first. So there's a couple different ways you can do this, and they're can be a little bit dangerous. So like right there, if I do that, I can take the steering wheel off, recenter it. The nut's on there, so it's not going to come all the way off. So I just barely started the steering wheel nut. It's now on there. Now what I'm going to do from here is I'm going to go ahead. Okay, so now this is on there, but it's not tight on the column, right? So as I move this, I can actually take the wheel loose, move it around. The steering wheel itself, there's a couple things I may do here. So this steering wheel is going to mount. How is it going to mount? Alright, now playing around with this adapter, I figured out that the metal spacer, so this rectangular port there, and the hole drilled in the center for the horn wire, line up if you get them in just the right place. So as a result of that, I'm going to go ahead and take these bolts back out of the wheel, and this piece here actually has to go up on the steering wheel. So I'm going to go ahead and put 3 bolts in here. Okay, so I've got those 3 bolts lined up on the steering column. Run my horn wire through there. Line up the 3 bolt holes that kind of line up. I'm going to snug these down. So we started out with the steering wheel straight. The steering column is still locked, so that has not changed. Obviously, this is not quite right with all these adapters in here, but that's all right. We can just take it off and move it. So now that steering wheel is, it's either that notch or that notch. One of those should be pretty good. Now, if you're like me and you know the steering wheel is not properly centered, I'm going to have to drive this now. So as I'm driving this, I'm going to have to be very careful. That's why all this stuff was just temporary. It's just good enough to get me in a position where I can line the steering wheel up. I'm not going to take the camera with me, but here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to drive down the road slow and gentle, knowing that this is not actually connected in properly. I will then come to a stop on the side of the road, pull it back, and adjust the steering wheel to where it needs to be, and then drive back here. And if I had to guess, it's probably going to be in that spot, but we'll find out. Alright, so I just took this for a ride. I got the steering wheel to a spot where I'm happy with it. It's not perfect, but with this with the style of steering these old four-wheel drive Dodges have, you kind of get what you get to a certain extent. So it's good. I am totally fine with where it's at. I know last time I had the truck turned right off, well, the battery was pretty low, so I'm just going to let it run and charge itself a little bit while I finish this up. So I pull those bolts back out, and now I can get down in here. And before I even go and get a torque wrench, I'll just go ahead and snug this down because it's in the spot it needs to be. Alright, so I had to shut it off and lock the steering wheel. The torque spec on this one is 30 foot-pounds. So I'm just going to kind of slowly tighten this one down. Oops. Battery's still hooked up. If you touch this thing to metal, it beeps. Okay, so there's 30 foot-pounds. Again, if you touch this thing to metal, horns go. Horn on this doesn't sound super healthy, but it's fine. Okay, now I'm going to take this thing, put it back in, knowing that we've got to go up on our window. This 4000 adapter actually came with an extension for this wire, but I'm pretty sure I'm not going to need it, so I'm going to try it without it first. Okay, so I'm just going to crank these down real nice and tight. Now we can get on to the actual steering wheel itself, and because I didn't disconnect the battery this second time, I'm probably going to accidentally blow the horn a few times. One of the things we have to install now is this ring. So the way this ring works is the horn wire hooks onto it. So the way this is going to work is I'll put my wire through here like we did before, and I'm going to start one of these bolts just by hand. This ring will then slip around here, and see how it's got the notch there like so. So I'm going to start that. I'm actually going to start one other bolt to hold it in place. Okay, so now the steering wheel is kind of sitting where it needs to be. I should actually, oops, so if I touch this, it's going to blow the horn, and that's what it should do. So I'm going to take my last steering wheel bolt, probably don't really need Loctite on these, but I'm doing it anyway. Use a little bit of blue Loctite, start them one at a time. Now these are the bolts that came with the wheel, not the adapter, and they've got this shoulder. That shoulder is critical for this horn portion to work properly. I'm going to grab my ratchet. Whoops. Snug those down. Grab our torque wrench. I'm going to torque these to 10 foot-pounds as well. There we are on that. Now, when I plug this in here, the horn is going to blow because I don't have the stuff set up. Actually, that turns. Okay, so I can bring that out. Alright. As you can see, when this ring drops, the horn blows. When it's up, it does not. Or if it touches that bolt right there, the horn blows as well. So I'll bring it back over kind of where it was, which should be out of the way. Now, this Tuff center cap. So this is our centerpiece here. That spring sits down into the wheel, and when I slam this together, the horn is going to blow for a minute. Now the spring holds it away, and unless you press down in the center, the horn does not blow. Now the last piece here is this one, which it's going to blow again when I put this on. Alright. I'm going to disconnect the battery and adjust this a little bit. Okay, so that's why I had the battery disconnected in the first place. But here we go. So this thing just snaps down and locks onto this lock ring here. And the spring is supposed to keep it out and turned off. So in the case of this steering wheel, I don't think this spring really has quite enough force. So I've got a couple of options. One, I could try to find a different spring. Two, I could weld some kind of spacer here, which is actually going to add more weight. So I think my third option is going to be try to find a washer that fits inside of there, and we'll space this up a little bit, giving it more effective spring pressure. Okay, so down here in the center, this is a 10mm washer I found that was almost the right size. I had to grind just a little bit on the edges, and now it is such a perfect fit that I can't get it back out of there to show it to you. So I'm going to take my spring again. The battery is disconnected this time. Okay, now because that is raised up, this spring doesn't want to sit down in as well. I'm going to take just a little bit of silicone, which I'm not crazy about doing, but this will work. Little dab of silicone down inside of there. And that'll hold the spring not only for assembly, but it'll kind of hold it there longer too. Go ahead, take my horn button, line up these dimples with the thing, press on, twist a little bit. Okay, so they drop through the whole 3 little holes there. Then you turn them, they lock on, and it should theoretically stay pretty good. And it feels like a winner, so let's hook the battery up and see what it does. Okay, so that's a good sign, no horn right now. Let's go ahead and hit the button. Horn works. So there we are. Straighten that baby up for you. So there it is, the wheel's all installed, everything seems good, horn works. Let me show you why we had to actually use this adapter. Now, if you look over here, so I'm coming in from this side, I think I got the view right. The distance from this shifter to here is about 2 inches. So without this adapter in here, or this spacer, the steering wheel and the shifter basically run into each other, and that just doesn't work. So with this 2-inch spacer, it puts it back in about the same spot as that factory steering wheel. So I think that's all you should really know to install one of these Grant reproduction Mopar Tuff steering wheels into a Ramcharger or a pickup that has tilt wheel. I believe that should go for some other Chrysler products that also use this Saginaw tilt steering column. So thanks for watching. Again, if you haven't hit that subscribe button yet, that really helps me out. I'll see you later.